David Zritsky for the Bond Experience. Welcome back. Well, you can see that I'm joined here by...
Joseph Darlington being James Bond.
You knew that. You didn't have to guess, right? And we're back for another one of these incredible discussions. And this one I don't think is going to be as easy as the last one. We did From Russia with Love, and we talked about this as a premise that we believe, or perhaps Joe believes, we'll see how this one works out, that there's the theory that the sophomore James Bond movies of the actors, so the second movie of the actors, for example, Sean Connery From Russia with Love, is a little bit clunky.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, I think the ones that stand out as just being the tent poles tend not to be the second one, because the second one for each actor is, again, they kind of came out swinging hard with the first one, and then by the time they're doing the second one, they're like, well, now what? How do we top that? And what worked, what didn't work? And they're still feeling their way. So mediocrity might just be a better way to say it. Like, sometimes they suffer from a little mediocrity.
Right. And it did not work so much with From Russia with Love. We said maybe certain aspects, but now, crack, we are here in front of the man with the golden gun, Roger Moore's sophomore outing. Joe, we got to start with you.
Yeah.
What did you think of the film overall?
I think this is a pretty good example of the theory that we're kind of exploring, where they kind of came out swinging for the first one, and now we're doing another one. Well, what now? And this is a prime example of where I don't think they have a good handle on who their James Bond is yet. The Roger Moore James Bond is now struggling to find its way. And a lot of people will sort of say that about this film, is that you have Roger Moore trying to be a little more badass. He's hitting women. Things are happening in this film, and it's does it work for him? Is that really where they should have gone? So you have that aspect of it. Plus, I think there's a lot of other things in this film. Again, like, perfect example would be the boat chase from Live and Let Die is spectacular. I mean, they really pull out all the stops. I mean, they're all over the place. There's big things happening. They do a boat chase in this, which is, I would say it's probably what the boat chase in The Man with the Golden Gun is akin to the car chase in Spectre. Just not a lot happening here, to the point where you're like, does this even qualify as a chase per se? I don't know.
No, listen, this is fair, and I want to be totally transparent with you. I actually really like this film. Like, when I watch it, it gives me a lot of joy because it's fun, it's bombastic, it's silly. Yeah. Here's the problem, and I think why it validates Joe's premise, is when I compare it to Live and Let Die, which to me is an abject classic. Yeah. You know, my favorite, I've said this before publicly and privately, my favorite Roger Moore outing. Yeah. Even better than, The Spy Who Loves Me, everything. So when I compare it to this, it comes up short. It is that clunky sophomore. But to me, this isn't a shutout because there are so many things to like about this. I think, for example, this one did some incredible things with gadgets. The bad guy has like a really cool gadget, which is very iconic. Yes. The bad guy in this film... Now, listen, don't go head to head with Mr. Big, because he's fantastic too. He's one of the best, actually. But the bad guy in this film, he feels kind of like a James Bond character. Yeah. So it's like, the Sean Bean type of thing in GoldenEye, where I get that connection. So there's some high moments for me.
I will absolutely agree with that. And I also will agree that this film has sort of, when you go back and read the novel, I've had to sort of, usually I'm just like, stick with Fleming. It'll always, don't ever deviate from the books. When you read The Man with the Golden Gun, you sort of say to yourself, okay, believe it or not, I think they made a more Bond-like film than the novel was. Because, you had Pistols Scaramanga, who was a cowboy. That might be very interesting in the 50s, but today not so much, or not even in the 70s, frankly. So I think Christopher Lee as Scaramanga, the Golden Gun as we see it, is much more Bond-like than even the novel. So I will absolutely agree with that.
I totally agree. And here's the other problem as I'm looking over my left-hand shoulder right here. This is the part of the premise that we have to address early on in this series that we're doing, is we can't help as Bond fans, and I know you're doing it too as well, is to compare it to the bookends. Since this is the second outing, for example, we are naturally comparing to Live and Let Die, and oh my gosh, poor Man with the Golden Gun, we're also got to compare it with The Spy Who Loved Me.
Yeah.
And both, talk about surrounding it with juggernauts.
Yeah. Right, yeah, and that's why I think that's why I kind of fell back on the term sophomore up until now we just said firsts, last, thirds. This one I keep using the term sophomore because it is just kind of like, all right, second outing, now what?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you're right. I think that is kind of the thing where you find in most of the cases, especially going forward, it's sandwiched in between two films that are very notable for certain reasons.
Yeah.
And right, this one is kind of the least notable because, and again, it's not to say we still sort of go back to a bad Bond movie is still 10 times better than the average movie in another franchise.
Absolutely.
So again, it's certainly not to say it's a bad film.
Yeah.
But does it hit the heights that the other ones are hitting? And I think in most of these cases, not so much.
It does fall short. Now, I will say this. I'm wondering, I always try to put myself in the minds of the franchise owners. For example, they said, all right, well, we had Sheriff Pepper in the first movie, and there was some humor, but it was kind of amidst all this kind of seriousness. Yeah. Let's just dial the living crap up of this. And I felt like this whole film is kind of that.
Yeah.
It's like, let's dial the stunts up. Let's dial Sheriff Pepper up. Let's dial the craziness of Knick-Knack up and things like that. And so we have the Man with the Golden Gun.
Right. And again, and that is that part of this whole thing is that it doesn't know what it wants to be yet. It still hasn't figured it hasn't picked its major yet. It's still kind of early on. We liked what we did before. Let's pull some of that into this. So you get Sheriff Pepper in the most weirdest of places where you're like, How did that guy get here?
Why is he test driving a car?
Just in every way, shape, or form. So on one hand, the film wants to be pretty serious. There are some serious moments. On in other parts, it wants to look at the camera and wink and just say, just go with it. Just pretend that this guy would be here. Whatever. And again, why not just make it? If you liked the idea of that in the first one, why not just make a character for this one that would make sense? We don't want to go to the trouble to make a new character. This one works. Let's just do that again. So so it's not giving you kind of like what I said about the boat chase. It's not going all the way. It stops short and just says, well, this is a movie that to me is good enough. We're giving you enough of what you want. Be happy with that and go home. And again, like you said, in Roger Moore's third, they will take a much different approach. Well, they will just go all the way and give you everything plus the kitchen sink and then some. This one is just okay. It's just enough.
It's interesting something you said. I want to highlight it because I hadn't thought about it until you put it this way. It's almost like they don't know what they want to be in this film.
Yeah.
So they have some really dark, serious moments with Bond like slapping her around and things like that. Some really dark, angry moments. And then they have slapsticky like wonk wonk. Yeah. And all the way to a point of, hold on, wait for it. They have the most spectacular jump and it's like I
just realized why that's there. That's perfect.
Joe has seen this for about 10 years, and he's probably like, why does he have that wood whistle?
Never even put the... That's brilliant.
Now you know. Anyway, but my point being is I almost feel like they really fluctuated. It's kind of the issue I had with The Living Daylights, where you had this kind of Roger Moore-like moments, but then you had a very serious Timothy Dalton at times.
Yeah. Right, yes. And again, and the problems that we're talking about, so far we're talking in terms of story, but it also works in terms of style.
Right.
For example, this film is kind of around the 60s sex comedies that were kind of popular. So now you have like again, like in Live and Let Die, it opens up with a girl running across the floor, going like this and running away, and then you got half naked women. He's hiding one in the closet, and then he's over here with this other one. I mean, I think this is still the first and only time you ever hear the word kinky used in a Bond film.
Really, 007.
Oh, I admit it's a little kinky.
I mean, this is kind of the era where we are.
Right.
So, and again, the question, does it fit in the world of James Bond? I know that this was sort of a thing back then.
Right.
Bond is a sexual character. There's certainly sex in all the Bond films. So do we incorporate that into this? Because this is where other films are starting to go. Does it work in here? I don't know. And again, I think they kind of... I think they shy away from that pretty quickly after this one, but here it is here. And again, it gives you this kind of weird feeling about the whole film. Like, am I watching James Bond or am I watching Benny Hill? You know, it's a little weird.
It's not a bad point. I will say this. There is an area of this film which I think is superlative, and that is the score and the song. I think The Man with the Golden Gun is a toe tapper. I listen to it all the time, even today.
Yeah.
And the score is just thrilling to me.
Yeah. I'll definitely concede about the score. The song, well, you know, not one of my...
to Live and Let Die.
The song "Live and Let Die"?
Yeah.
The song "Live and Let Die" blows.
That's what I'm saying.
I
agree with you.
Okay, all right.
Joe was like, I need to leave right now. The day has
like,
ended now.
Are you telling me that Lulu's smash hit "The Man with the Golden Gun" is better than?
But it's a fun song. It's just, to me, maybe that's how I would encapsulate this movie. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's a guilty pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the martial arts scene with Roger Moore where he's like hardly kicking above his waist.
right.
And the two Asian girls, I'm
Yeah.
not too sure what part they play other than they forget him and he's got to run off.
Right.
There were some weird moments in this film.
Right. Yes. Exactly. Right. There's the moments of comedy. It's like what? Why did this happen? What is happening over here? Yeah. It is right. It's at the very. I mean, I think that even diehard fans would probably concede that there are just moments that feel a little clunky. That it's like we don't know what we're trying to do. I mean, James Bond breaks out of a karate school. I mean, and this is sort of, again, they kind of go for the chuckle rather than, you know, he wakes up in this karate school surrounded by karate masters, right? And you're saying to yourself, oh, this is a fix. How's he going to get out of this one? And what ends up happening? He kicks one guy and then he kicks the other guy and he bows real quick and jumps out the window and it's over. And it's like, I mean, and again, it's like the pay is the payoff enough, and then you get the goofy scene in the car outside. Then it moves to that boat chase, which again doesn't really turn into much, and you get Sheriff Pepper's back again. So it's a funny little weird hodgepodge, but yeah, certainly not comparable to what comes after this one.
Yeah, and let's lift it up a little bit. There are some highlights for me, and I want you to name your highlights too. But for me, I think when Bond visits Lazar, the weapons dealer, the whole thing with the gun, forever hold your peace. I think that particular moment from beginning to end is fantastic. And I have to tell you, I like when Bond arrives on Scaramanga's Island.
Yeah,
I like the when they're having dinner, or, you know, and that food, and they're almost social to each other, cordial to each other, and that's a very Fleming-like thing where, you know, the bad guy is talking to the good guy, and so I love all that part, and even the showdown. You know, in between, you've got some softer moments, I'll say, but those two areas were highlights. What do you like about the film?
I would absolutely concur with that, and I think that what you're talking about to me is a great example of how even some of the worst Bond films have some of the best elements. Because and it's great because that's why you never really get a bad Bond movie because they have so many elements in it that there's probably so many things they're getting right in the film that it can outweigh the things that are not really working. I think the locations are great. I think the villain is great. I think Knick Knack is a very good.
Yeah.
I kind of like the twist on the classic henchman that he's just like he's not the classic. He's not Oddjob.
Right.
You know, he kind of sort of has his own thing going on. I think Andrea Anders is great in this. I like her story, being a kept woman, sending the bullet to James Bond to rescue her.
What about Mary Goodnight?
Not as much. Like seriously, it's again, talk about just being of that era. We have like basically Chrissy from Three's Company
Stacey
as the
Sutton.
Bond girl, yeah. So not everything is firing on all cylinders,
Right.
but certainly, but you're absolutely right. I think the locations work. There is absolutely a lot in this to absorb. I think Scaramaga's Funhouse is very dated. I would even venture to say maybe it was even dated when they did it. Possibly not, but honestly, it's hard to watch now. Frankly,
It is a bit dated. I mean, he was from the circus, so it's kind of neat that it's bombastic and crazy. But there are some things. For example, the scene where Bond discovers for the first time he had no idea that there was MI6 set up in that ship where everything's kind of tilted, and he sees M and Miss Moneypenny. That to me is the silliness of this film.
Yes.
It's just like this, I had no idea that this gigantic floating MI6 was here.
Yeah, no, it's very true, and you can see that. I mean, again, we're past the 60s now. We're very much in the 70s,
Yes.
and we're kind of getting to where we know that these Bond films have gimmicks that we kind of rely on. We want to throw curveballs to the audience. So, the ship leaning over and everything in the ship is cockeyed works. I mean, it's very, it's an interesting looking set. So, I mean, all of those aspects are still there.
Yes.
So it's not like you walk out of this film feeling gypped that you didn't get a Bond movie. You definitely do get it. And I mean, honestly, even the line in the beginning where he says, "Sir, who would want to take a contract out of me?" And he's like, "Jealous husbands, outraged chefs, humiliated tailors." I mean, that's
That
right
line
from
is
the
classic.
novel. It's so, and it was so great that they left it intact.
It is great.
As he says it in the book. So I mean, stuff like that is working. And honestly, like I said, I have to give this film credit because it does improve the novel so much. Where so many times I would be kind of shouting at the leave Fleming's material alone.
Yeah.
But in this case, I think it does come across more Bondish than even the novel does.
It'll be interesting to see the comments because I believe, like myself, even people that really have a big heart for this movie. I mean, my gosh, he's mostly wearing safari suits. How can I not have a heart for this movie?
Yeah.
Even people with a big heart may admit that this does fall within your premise of the sophomore clunk because you can't help but compare it to these other giants.
Yeah.
And when you do that, it doesn't match.
Right, yeah, and I do. I think we both know people who not only do they say this is not only do they kind of apologize for it, not only do they say, "Come on, it's not so bad." No, they genuinely really like this particular film. For some people, it was one of the first films they saw when they were younger.
That factor is very big,
right? And again, like I said, I can certainly understand why you would enjoy it so much. But like you said, its place amongst its peers, struggling.
Okay, so we're pretty much in agreement.
Yeah.
Enjoyable film, still a Bond film.
Yeah.
But a little clunky, especially compared to everything else.
Exactly right. Just kind of it's got to sit in the front row in the class picture. It's not towering over its peers.
So like a cabbie going off duty, we've got to pass Dalton on the street because we've already done him.
We have.
And so we're not going to be talking about License to Kill.
Yeah.
Probably just as well.
Yeah.
Dalton doesn't need to be beaten up. And we're going to go right to Brosnan.
Yes, we are.
So what are we going to be talking about next?
Tomorrow Never Dies.
Oh, boy.
And I do you think that'll fit into the thing?
Well, it's going to be interesting because I don't want to speculate yet, but I will leave with this. It made my top 5 Bond films.
Wow. Okay, so I got my work cut out.
But I've seen what you've rated it over time. So I think there might be some bruising on the next one. Look at these clean faces now. Joe, thanks for everything.
Thank you.
Who have you? Who are you?
Joe Darlington being James Bond, and
David Zaritsky from the Bond Experience, and we'll see you all real soon. Take care. Thanks for watching this episode. If you want to be up on the latest from the Bond Experience, just click on this subscribe and subscribe to our channel. You're going to get all the latest and greatest information, plus some exclusive content. And by the way, speaking of content, here's something especially for you, just because we know you. Talk to you soon.